Have you ever had the feeling that something is wrong but couldn't quite place it? I was attempting to look excited for a special adults only getaway that my parents had reportedly been planning for months, as I stood at the departure gate with my suitcase in one hand and my boarding pass in the other. They maintained that it was just for adults. An opportunity to get back in touch, they stated. They said, "You deserve a break." They claimed that the children would get along well with Sarah. I therefore allowed myself to believe them. In addition to typing out a color-coded instruction sheet and stocking the refrigerator, I also video phoned my babies from the Uber on the way to the airport and said goodbye to them like it was a scene from a movie. I was almost excited for a moment because I was eager to recall who I was before I was mom. Then, Claire entered. 3 children, backpacks, food, sticky hands, and high-pitched chaos, not just Claire, but her whole little circus procession. You saw the image. I felt sick to my stomach. When my mind tries to reason its way out of a betrayal, it does that. They couldn't have been, could they? I glanced at my mother. Oh, hold on. I assumed this was just for adults. As if I had asked if the sky was blue, she waved a hand and grinned. Don't be so shocked, Lily. My father then appeared, laughing as if he had heard a joke that I had not. With Claire's children, things are different. They are completely trouble-free, correct. Not a problem. Max, Claire's youngest child, was already yelling like a banshee and using an airport chair as a jungle gym. However, yes, not a problem. Claire gave me one of her phony, breezy laughs after catching my glance. Calm down, Lil. My children are angels. You won't even be aware of them. My mother then stated it. My heart was wrenched out and thrown in a TSA bin by these words. We simply adore them more. To be honest, I initially believed I had misheard. I mean, no way, shall we? In reality, no mother says that. However, she gave me a direct look, grinned as though she were sharing her meal with me, and repeated it in a different way. Oh, Lily, stop being so touchy. Simply put, they're simpler. They pay attention. They're more, she said, gesturing hazily as if she didn't want to continue the phrase. You realize, lovable, adorable. My face became icy. Anger, betrayal, and disbelief all began to buzz in my chest, colliding like drunks at last call. My children were the only thing on my mind. At home, maybe midway through a snack or watching Paw Patrol reruns, my adorable, giddy, messy, and incredible babies. They were just as endearing. They weren't more challenging. They simply weren't the most popular. Furthermore, my parents made no effort to conceal it. With a voice that was scarcely coherent, I muttered, "You lied to me." Dad let out a sigh. Stop being dramatic. Claire has 3 children and is a single mother. She was more in need of this than you were. I quietly begged Claire to at least recognize how twisted up this was as I gazed at her. However, no. She gave a bored shrug, as if she was entitled to the red carpet when she brought 3 children to an adult-only event. The realization struck me like a kick to the stomach at that point. It wasn't a scheduling error. This was no coincidence. It was a decision, a conscious, planned decision, one for which they made no effort to apologize or offer an explanation. And I had to make a decision. Be the silent, appreciative daughter, or quit acting. I glanced at my boarding pass below. Next, up at my relatives, then back again. My knuckles turned white when I clamped down on my suitcase's handle. Abruptly, I realized. My mother sighed once more, as if I were causing a stir at a grocery store, and said, "Lily, don't be so dramatic. It's not as if we abandoned your children. At home, they are completely safe." "That's not the point," I stated in a tight, quiet voice. However, the sword beneath it would have been audible to anyone who truly knew me. Dad sighed. "We reasoned that you would have more fun without them. You're always under a lot of stress." A sour chuckle struggled to escape my throat. This was for me, I see. What a considerate betrayal. Claire was once again engrossed in her phone, as if her fingerprints were not on it. "And Claire?" With a sharper tone now, I asked. She brought hers without hesitation? My mother winced, as if she had finally realized that I wasn't going to ignore this. Softly and condescendingly, she remarked, "You know how hard things are for her? 3 children. No, Dad. She was more in need of this than you were. Once more, there it was. She was more in need of this than you were. Their gravestones ought to bear such inscription. Something inside of me was splitting. I raised my voice and screamed. You keep saying that. Are you all able to hear? How about me? Or do I not qualify since I am not your defenseless, impoverished daughter who is in continual need of saving? Lily, please speak more quietly, Dad yelled. No. I stepped forward, my eyes hurting from the back, but I refused to let them down. Not in this place. Not for them. You misled me. If I knew Claire was bringing her children, you know I would never abandon mine. You did it, even though you knew. At last, Claire raised her head. God, it's only a holiday, Lily. The world is not ending. And the last match thrown onto the gasoline was that. I let out a breath. Steady. Be calm. Managed. Risky. After saying, enjoy your vacation, I pivoted on my heel. Mom's voice pierced the atmosphere. Lily! Where are you heading? The plane is taking off. Not for me, I said behind my back. Lily! With that traditional dictatorial fury, Dad snarled. You have no right to act like a child about this. I paused, rotated slowly. A kid? I said. That's a lot of money, coming from those who openly expressed their affection for my sister's children over their own. Mom turned pale. We didn't mean it that way, honey, I said. That's exactly how you meant it. That's how you've always meant it. Simply put, I've been too dim to notice it. Claire gave an eye roll. Lily, Jesus, quit being so touchy. Do you want my kids kicked out by Mom? I gazed at her. Chilly. Empty. Completed. No, I said to Claire. I just wish you all thought I mattered too, for once. I left the airport after saying that. I didn't turn around. It was a blur on the way home. I can't even recall the roads I traveled. I was attempting to breathe through the tightness in my chest while clutching the steering wheel as if it were apologizing to me. Have you ever cried until your ribs hurt? That tense, silent sense that your entire body is on the verge of collapsing, not crying. I wasn't simply leaving a holiday by car. I was leaving years of acting behind in my car. Every birthday where Claire's children received expensive presents, while mine received puzzles from the dollar store. During the holidays, my son would pull on my sleeve and murmur, "Why didn't Grandma give me the same embrace that she gave Max?" I ignored the frequent slights because I didn't want to be the dramatic one. I was never dramatic, it turns out. I was absolutely correct. The porch light flicked on by itself, as if it was pleased to see me when I finally parked into my driveway. And I felt ashamed for a moment, as if I had done something wrong, as if leaving me made me weak. Then I noticed two small shadows pressed against the window as the drapes moved. Noah and Emily, my children, who said what at the airport didn't matter to them. Even if the adults' only trip had been a hoax, it didn't matter to them. All they cared about was Mom coming home. Before I even made it to the porch, the door swung open. Mom! Like she was jumping off a trampoline, Emily flung herself into my arms. Her cheeks reddened and her hair jumped. With his face pressed into my trousers as if attempting to fuse with me, Noah wrapped himself around my leg. With a calm voice and raised eyebrows, Sarah exclaimed, "You're back already," as she entered the corridor. Since high school, she had been my best friend. She was able to distinguish between me being irritated and being destroyed. The latter was this. I said, "I'll explain later," while continuing to clutch my children as if they were in danger of being taken away. Sarah gave a nod. No pressure, no questions. Simply being there. I trusted her with my children because of this. She is therefore more like family to me than anyone with whom I have DNA. I tucked the kids in after bath time, bedtime readings, and 3 extra cuddles apiece. And then I just sat down at the kitchen table. There was silence in the house, too silent. I gazed at my mobile device. Mom missed 5 calls. Dad gave me 2. Not from Claire. Naturally. I sat there looking through the chat in the family group. The same one in which Claire's children accounted for 90% of the messages check out Max's drawing. Take a look at Ella's recital. They're maturing so quickly. What would you not find there, do you know? One picture of my children from their most recent birthday. It's not that I didn't send them, I did after all. They simply never received recognition. And all of a sudden, something inside of me clicked into place. I launched the chat window. What I typed wasn't planned. I didn't mentally practice it as I typically do. I simply let it out. I will not be joining the trip. I will also no longer be a member of this family. All of my life, I've been treated as though I and my children were less. And you stated today that this will never change. I'm done now. Have fun on your trip. Don't give me a call. Please refrain from texting me. Never again should you expect anything from me. I've read it once. I had trembling hands. I then clicked send, without hesitation. No regrets. I then exited each family group chat one at a time, blocked their phone numbers. I shut down my phone. I did not shed a tear that night. I dozed off. For the first time in ages, I woke up to the sound of silence rather than the dread of a message, a call, a caustic text, or some passive-aggressive joke about family always sticking together. Calm. Lonely. But calm. While I was making pancakes in the morning, Sarah stopped by. The children were arguing over who got the dinosaur-shaped pancake while still in their pajamas. Her eyes narrowed as she leaned against the counter. All right. Leak. I told her everything. All of my mother's words. Claire looked at me every time. My father's attempt to portray me as unreasonable for demanding equal treatment at that very moment. By the end, Sarah's hands were shaking with anger, and she had to put down her coffee. Lily, Jesus, she whispered. That is messed up. I made an effort to dismiss it. It's not shocking. It's not acceptable because of that. She was also correct. I had mistaken regularity for acceptance for years. You shouldn't put up with someone just because they've always treated you poorly. So what comes next? She inquired. I glanced to my children, laughing over crumbs and syrup. One grinned. I concentrate on this now. On them. On me. I pleaded for affection for far too long when I shouldn't have had to. Sarah gave a nod. You're absolutely correct. You and those children, you are so deserving of better. And I believed it for the first time. The fallout was swift. The calls resumed by that evening. Mom first. Next, Dad. Then Claire, but hers was only a few days later, and only after I hadn't replied yet. The texts were somewhat erratic. Please, Lily, be sensible. Let's have a conversation. You're going overboard. Every time you exaggerate the situation, you're being self-centered. How much have we done for you, do you know? Yes, exactly. The classic guilt sandwich. Gaslight, love bomb, then threaten. Traditional. Then the one that sealed it appeared. Your father and I require financial assistance. We must speak. And there it was. The cause of the unexpected urgency, not my absence, nor wanting to put things right, nor missing my voice. They feared losing what I had given them. Cash, time, assistance, help. Last year, I paid off their electricity payment twice. Assisted with auto repairs. When Dad forgot his PIN for the third time that month, I went grocery shopping. But when I was a new mother drowning? When Noah wouldn't stop screaming and I hadn't slept for 3 days, I was bawling in a Target parking lot. Nothing. Crickets. They never loved me as their daughter. They exploited me as their daughter. I thus typed a final message that evening. You're correct, Mom. I can't simply stop talking to you. I ought to have taken action years ago. I then blocked them. Once more. For good this time. You would imagine that severing ties with your family would involve some kind of dramatic event, such as screaming, slamming doors, or perhaps a final confrontation outside in the rain, like in those ridiculous Netflix dramas. However, no. There was quiet. Heavy, broad, cold quiet. It lingered like a fog for the following week. The buzzing of the phone ceased. No more texts about guilt. No more Claire playing the golden kid on blast. No more sarcastic voicemails about how much they'd sacrificed. It was simply gone. And strangely, I didn't overlook it. I continued to wait for the grief to strike, for the hole to show up. However, nothing did. Not how I had anticipated. As it happens, you don't mourn those who were never truly there. The thought of them makes you sad. The wish that they would alter. That section? That was a bit more time-consuming. I began to notice the odd calm in my own home on day 8. Or possibly day 9. The silence was no longer frightening. I owned it. There was no sense of the air holding its breath. The corners did not conceal any stress. Only my children are giggling in the adjacent room. It was only me, preparing dinner, free from the familiar rumbling in my stomach. I was just getting used to my new normal when I received an unexpected call. Jason, my former partner. It had been over 2 years since we last chatted on the phone. We now communicate about school pickups and joint vacations via email or two-word texts. I nearly didn't respond when his name appeared on the screen. However, curiosity prevailed. He said, "Lily," and I could hear the tone of his voice even across the phone. Hesitant. Be cautious. As if he had no idea which version of myself he would receive. "What's going on?" I asked in a neutral tone. He cleared his throat. "Your mom called me, I guess." I went cold. "Pardon me?" He laughed awkwardly and dryly. "She said you were acting out, and that the family was falling apart because of you. Tried to use guilt to get me to give you a call. I believed I might be the voice of reason. She did, of course. She continued to believe she could control the story even after I blocked her and left. I still believed she could enlist others to entice me back. I prepared myself. What did you say too?" He paused. "I told her not to involve me in it, that I had nothing to do with it. That. They should be appreciative that you even took their calls in the first place since you're a decent mother." I blinked. "Jason, when we were married, the man hardly ever showed up. The man who said, 'I just can't do this anymore,' while I stood in our kitchen with a toddler clinging to my leg and a baby on my hip. Was that man defending me?" "Whoa," I exclaimed. "I did the best I could." He let out another sigh. "Look, Lily, I admit that I was an embarrassing husband. I am aware that I have disappointed you more times than I can remember. However, you weren't worthy of that. Not from them. Not from anybody." A pause occurred. Not hefty, not sentimental, just last. "Thanks," I muttered. "I required that." He gave a low, clumsy laugh. Avoid growing accustomed to it. I sat there looking at the wall after we hung up. I was not warm, or affirmed, or as if Jason and I were going to be best buddies all of a sudden. That type of situation didn't exist. However, something did seem to have closed. Something that had spent too much time sitting raw and exposed. Closure isn't always dramatic. Even if they have never seen you before, it's still someone seeing you at last. And I understood that I didn't require him. They weren't necessary for me. I already knew. And I didn't need confirmation. I was correct to leave. After then, the days passed by, less noisy, lighter. Little things like how much better I slept became apparent to me. I was so much more patient with my children. Breathing was so much easier. I wasn't watching over my shoulder for the next insult that was passed off as a joke. I wasn't looking for indications of exclusion in group talks. I was merely surviving. And my children? They were doing well. One evening, as usual, Emily walked in with her pet bunny trailing behind her while I was doing clothes on the couch. "When are we going to visit Grandma and Grandpa's house again, Mommy?" she asked, blinking up at me. Popping his head around the corner was Noah, who had been half sleeping in the adjacent room. "Yes, it has been a long time since we last saw them." I went cold. This was not what I had anticipated. What would you say to a 5-year-old about emotional neglect? How do you explain to a toddler that love can be demanding at times and unreliable at others? Brushing a hair behind Emily's ear, I knelt. "My dear, we will no longer be seeing Grandma and Grandpa." She scowled. "Why not?" I inhaled deeply. "Because sometimes we don't get the treatment we deserve from people, and we must make a better decision when that occurs." Emily blinked. I gave it some thought, then gave a nod. "All right," she said, as if it were the most straightforward thing in the world. Then, with her rabbit flopping behind her as if it had heard worse, she turned and skipped down the hall. As simple as that. I wish I had had it that simple. After talking to my children for a few days, I began to think the storm was over. The warmth returned to my home. My mind felt less congested. My parents' silence had changed from one of strain to one of relief. My reflection also changed in appearance. The edges are softer, lighter. However, life is like that. Someone arrives to kick in the door just as you're getting comfortable. It was Claire this time. Through the front window, I caught a glimpse of her standing on my porch, as if she was waiting for me to forgive and fall into her arms. As if nothing had occurred. No warning. Don't text. She was the only one wearing big sunglasses and acting as like she hadn't ruined our relationship and left like it didn't exist. I gazed at her while I stood there. I genuinely thought about ignoring the knock for a moment. However, there was a part of me that needed to confront her, the me that was still recovering and putting herself back together. I then opened the door. Enough. No grin. No hello. No encouragement to enter. What are you looking for? With my arms folded, I inquired. Slowly, with her usual dramatic flair, Claire removed her glasses. Whoa. No hello? I simply arched my brows. She let out a sigh like though she had been wronged. I came to speak. Concerning Mom and Dad. There is nothing to discuss, she said. Come on, Lily. In a hushed voice like if we were in a Lifetime film. All right, you've made your point. You're angry. However, months have passed. Your folks are still with you. I laughed at that. I mean, have a good chuckle. Not the kind of ha. The kind that erupts when someone says something so incredibly tone-deaf that you aren't even able to be angry. No, Claire. They were my parents. Until they explicitly stated that you were more important than I was. She gave an eye roll. Oh, please. They adore you. I didn't shout. I refrained from crying. I didn't flinch at all. I simply told the truth. Be calm. Simple. Not in the same manner. And I'm done acting like that's all right. She blinked. I felt as though I had smacked her, but with facts instead. Furthermore, Claire was never able to deal with facts, particularly when they contradicted her story. You're exaggerating, she whispered. I remarked, and you're being just who you've always been. All right. Not aware. Love is a trophy that the golden child believes she never had to earn. She started to speak, but I interrupted her. I've had enough of being second best. I have had enough of being the other daughter. While you enter with your mess and are praised as though you invented parenthood, I'm done waiting for bits of attention. Claire appeared, perplexed, as if she was unable to identify me. She must not have anticipated this side of myself, the one that no longer required validation, approval, or even closure. She struggled with her car keys and shifted her weight. All right, in any case, that is your bargain if you wish to harbor resentment, I said. It's not a grudge, it's a limit. And I don't regret it. I began to shut the door. She remained still, as if she was trying to express something else but was unable to use the language of accountability. She simply glanced at me. Goodbye, Claire. And I closed the door this time. I didn't cry when I leaned against it. I didn't fall to the ground in a pool of tears. I remained motionless. Keep quiet. Still. Since my anger had subsided, I was finished. Sarah visited that evening. As the children chased one another along the hallway, we sat on the couch and drank tea. She raised an eyebrow and remarked, So, your sister finally showed up? Yes. I'm going to assume that she wants you to forget and forgive her so she won't have to feel awkward. I grinned. Perfect. And? I ordered her to go. Sarah smiled. You did, damn it! I sipped some of my tea. I lowered my shoulders. I was free of regret for the first time in a very long time. I wasn't thinking about what I should have said or practicing my comebacks. I expressed what had to be expressed, and I meant what I said. Don't wait any longer. Don't bend anymore. Don't beg anymore. I had my children. I was at peace. My electricity was restored. And that was more than sufficient. The things you think you'll miss after you leave. Your family are amusing. You can picture the important things, like birthdays, Christmas meals, and Sunday morning phone calls. But you're not haunted by that. The little things are what stick around. The items that never existed. Like when your mom's fridge doesn't have a picture of your child. The quiet that follows the sharing of good news. The fact that you had to make yourself smaller in order to enter the room. I tried to earn something they never gave me for the most of my life. Not entirely. Not without restriction. Conditional love isn't love. It's just control masquerading as love. I had finished adorning it. Weeks went by, then a month. The quiet persisted. Claire is gone. No more texts that say, "You'll regret this." No more calls under false pretenses of guilt requesting assistance. Just the kids and me. And, of course, Sarah, my everlasting companion. We discovered a new cadence. Early morning cartoons under one blanket, Saturday pancakes, and dance parties in the living room were all elevated to hallowed status. I was no longer merely getting by. It included me. There, rooted. Complete. The children never again inquired about my parents, as if their young souls already understood what mine took years to discover, that not all families, despite their outward appearance, are secure. Emily approached me one evening as I was folding laundry. She held out one of her drawings and said, "Mommy, is our family here?" She had drawn Noah, her, and me together. Too many arms, untidy hair, and stick figures. But over each one, Mom had written our names. I grinned as I glanced down at it. "Yes, darling, our family is that." Satisfied, she nodded and skipped off to look for her brother. I spent a lot of time looking at that drawing. I realized then that this was what I had been pursuing all along. A family that isn't flawless. Not even a large one, just one in which there was no scorecard for love. One where I could just be myself. One where my children never felt like they had to fight for my love. Here it was, directly before me. I had a cup of tea on the back porch one evening, after the children had gone to sleep, and the house was peaceful. There were stars everywhere. The sky was clear, and the wind was just enough to tell me that I was still alive. Sarah once informed me that recovery is not a sudden event. It moves slowly, quiet, steady, certain, like the tide coming in. And I felt it at last, sitting there in the dark. I had lost my anger. I wasn't expecting a call. I wasn't practicing dialogue that I would never have. I wasn't anticipating their arrival, since I now saw me. The folks who taught me that I was second best had left me. My children would never have to doubt their value since I had halted the pattern. And regardless of what others may say, that isn't selfish. That is holy. I might never be able to explain my departure to my parents. Until the day she passes away, Claire is likely to continue telling the narrative. And it's okay, because I didn't choose for them this time. For myself, I made it. For my children. For the family that we decided to form. And in this peaceful, lovely life we've created, I am completely certain of one thing every morning when I get up. I kept them. I discovered who I was. I was also worth looking for.